Hillary Clinton won the coin toss before tonight's first presidential debate. Begs the questions, how many six-figure speeches did Bill Clinton have to make in order to secure that victory? And how many murders were committed? Trump vs. Hillary starts now!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin!
Oh, that's right. It was fight night at HOFSTRA University. Welcome to Trump versus Hillary. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at TrumpHillary16. If you're watching live on YouTube right now, make sure you join us in the chat room and share our comments. We'll get to you a little bit later in the show. I'm Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ. To my immediate left, a little closer than I'm used to having him, Stephen Helmkamp at Stephen Helmkamp. And there's a safe distance between Stephen and Drexel because, careful, at Drexel Heard on the Twitter. And of course, down at the end, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. Our other panelist, Scott Moore at SMan80. He'll be joining us via phone in a little bit. We'll also have another special guest via phone, which I'll let Stephen talk about when we get to it. Yep. But first, I want to go briefly down the panel, see what people thought, just sort of an overall. You know, you can say who you thought won, but I feel like you're able to isolate some things that each candidate did well. And the way we do things over here. Ladies first. Chelsea, your thoughts?
Well, thank you. I was pleasantly surprised that it was not as boring as I was expecting.
First few minutes, I thought it was going to be. I started to like check baseball scores and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
This debate was very hyped, and then in contradiction to that, everybody's saying this is going to be a snooze fest. Everybody's going to be on their best behavior. Don't have high expectations of a really entertaining evening. And then within 12 minutes, I was like so happy that I was actually wrong about that.
Yeah.
So it was.
For me, it was 16 minutes, but see, you know, so you got interested a little bit earlier than me, so that's good.
I knew something was going to be good the first time that Trump interrupted Lester Holt, and I knew that was the moment that I knew that this was going to go well for television, I should say.
Good theater, as it were. Drexel?
I'll let Stephen answer first because
a little ping pong, a little left, a little right, a little left.
Is this more of the ladies first?
Yes,
that I
absolutely.
extended?
Not cool, bro.
Just saying.
I thought this boxing match was definitely hyped up to be a boxing match, like Manny Yao.
Only in America, y'all.
Floyd Mayweather, but I actually thought it was going to be really tame too, and it definitely started out that way. But certainly we saw it heat up, and I was pleasantly surprised as well. I mean, I was pretty content with what both sides did. I didn't hear anything surprising, and I wasn't anticipating to. But all in all, I thought it was a pretty solid debate. I think we got a lot of ground covered.
Drexel?
I thought, well, first of all, I was going to say that I'm really glad that Trump's business in Charlotte is his one black friend, because that's how I felt. And but I think overall,
are you going on record saying you are not Trump's one black friend?
Okay. I am not his African American.
Okay.
But
Omarosa?
Anyway,
Carson. I thought overall the debate was, you know, I can't really call it a debate because there was not an exchange of ideas. But I thought overall, you know, they both stayed pretty calm and it was fine.
Right. Well, I thought it was most interesting when Trump started actually being a little bit more Trump-like, and clearly Hillary had been coached, and I'm not saying she couldn't come up with these ideas on her own, but her team agreed that the way to do it is you start gradually chipping away at things that you know are going to bother him, things that he has to respond to, like the loan from your father. That was the first time where there was a little crack, and he needs to correct things. And he went through the debate needing to correct things that, for his sake, he probably should have left untouched, which we'll talk more about it. But I think he definitely landed some great shots at her, things that are definitely weaknesses, concerns that people have. Unfortunately for the Trump people, he opened himself up with a lot of those things. You know, he brings up the idea that the Hillary Clinton 2008 campaign started the birther movement. But then you're setting yourself up to be criticized for basically being the person who took the torch and ran for 4 years between Olympics holding the birther torch.
He actually takes that proudly, though. He said he was proud to be the one to have Obama actually produce his birth certificate.
Right. He's very proud of it, and that's why he shouldn't talk about it, because to most people, that's those, that's a fringe issue. That's the crazy sort of,
racist
Conspiracy.
issue.
I'm not even going that far, but yes, people do definitely consider it to be racist, and to be so proud of it is not something that's going to help you in this forum.
Not with logical people.
Here's the thing: Donald Trump was proud of a lot of things that he shouldn't have been proud of tonight. But the fact of the matter is that when the Obamas hit the trail like they did a couple of weeks ago, they're going to continue to hit the trail over the next few weeks. And something tells me that they're going to try to bring up the fact that Donald Trump has carried that torch for so long. And I don't think that that's going to boil over well for Donald Trump when it comes to swing voters and certainly not African Americans. You can't bring up stop and frisk in talking about race relations and think that the African American community is going to back you at some point, or the Latino community, or pretty much any minority community. So I think it's going to
Or
be
anyone that understands how the law
right.
works.
And so I think that at a certain point, he's going to lose on that issue when it comes to that, when they start hitting the trail 2 and 3 times a week.
Great points. And what we now want to do is we want to bring our guest on, and it's an associate of Mr. Stephen Helmkamp.
We have
so
a
I'll give him
very
the honor.
special guest calling in tonight. He is a pro-Trumper. He has volunteered at many of the campaign rallies. He's an attorney in Palm Beach, the second home of Trump, for his famous club Mar-a-Lago. His name is Christian Cribbs. He's joining us tonight on the phone. Christian.
I remember Christian Cribbs from the chat room, and I don't remember our exchange, but I do remember that I said I liked your name, but not sure about much else. But Christian, welcome,
Welcome to the show.
The show. So give us your thoughts on how the debate went. And obviously, as a guest, you don't have to look for good things that Hillary was able to do. But if you do feel like there's anything that she did that surprised you, please let us know. We'll give you a couple of uninterrupted minutes. At least we'll try, Drexel.
Unlike most Democrats, I am in the middle when it comes to common sense. And I do think that tonight was a pretty fair match between the two of the candidates. I think that Donald put his points out. I think that Hillary also countered him pretty well. Also, I don't think that tonight will make a huge change in the polls, which is wonderful for me because he's ahead. Your UCLA poll, which, California is absolutely hopeless. He's ahead 4 points. He's been ahead 7 points. But, we're ahead in the UCLA polls. I don't believe any of these polls, by the way. I've never met a supporter that is going to vote for Hillary Clinton besides I've never met Drexel or the...
Well, you do live in Palm Beach, my man.
Who, by the way, is wonderful and beautiful, but I have never actually met someone in my life that is voting for Hillary Clinton, so these polls I'm not so sure of. But I do think that each of them held their own, and I think that each of them did a good job. Hillary, I think, admitting to mistakes and error in her emails to 100 and potentially 120 million people tonight was a mistake. Most of us don't do the research that you and I have done in this campaign, and we don't keep up with the campaign the way that the rest of America does. A lot of voters, unfortunately, are uninformed. And for her to announce in front of 120 million people that she made a mistake and she shouldn't have done it, I don't think worked well for her, and I think people are going to research. I think Lester Holt, who I know, great friends with Matt Lauer, NBC, nothing but Clinton. I like Matt. Lester Holt, not so much. But I don't think he kept control tonight. I think that he was slow. I think that he admitted at the end of the debate that he didn't get to what he wanted to get to. There's a couple things. I wrote 5 or 6 things down where Hillary said that she's going to help small businesses. She surely hasn't. NAFTA was a disaster. NAFTA has sent jobs out of this country. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Missouri.
Well, let's sort of tick off the 5 things on your list. Just sort of get to the meat of each bullet point, Christian.
Sure. Well, Trump said something so great, and I think that it was the best line of the night. You've been doing this for 30 years and you've done nothing, and now you have it planned. 30 years of absolutely nothing. Her husband's proven to be a failure and a cheater, by the way. 30 years of absolutely nothing. The woman has to stop pandering to black people.
The secretary.
When I heard her on the Black radio show say that she keeps in her purse hot sauce, I mean, how bad does that get? If Donald Trump said that, he'd be called a racist. It's absolutely
I agree.
unbelievable. She thinks that she can help the black community. The black community has suffered under absolutely disgusting circumstances because of Democrats. We have issues in North Carolina, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Ferguson, in Wisconsin because of Democratic-controlled cities. It's disgusting to me. And this man who is proven to run a business, who has started with a small loan, and it's a small loan for Manhattan, by the way, of $1 million, has turned it into billions of dollars.
Our esteemed colleague Drexel Heard has a point he'd like to raise with you, Christian.
I will let you.
Drexel. I love Drexel, but Drexel, I never met you, but I gotta tell you, Drexel, Trump calls Hillary, crooked Hillary. I call you denying Drexel.
At least you're not crooked, Drexel.
I will take that. But finish your points, and then I'll continue.
I think you had something in response to her panel.
I actually have a few points,
Okay.
But I will let him finish.
I'm ready for you.
All right, go ahead and finish, Christian, and then we'll let Drexel go.
I'm ready for Drexel.
Okay, he's ready for. It's Drexel time. All right, let's go.
Listen, I appreciate. Listen, Christian, I appreciate the fact.
And Christian, we can't hear you very well, so we'll just we'll sort of go to you when there's a moment, a pause or whatever. So if you talk over, you'll probably get drowned out, which Stephen can relate to. Anyway, Drexel.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the fact that I appreciate the nickname. I wish it was a better nickname. However, I will just deny that nickname. However, there are a few points, as they always say, people are entitled to their opinions, but not their own facts. First of all, I would like to point out that Hillary Clinton said the hot sauce in her bag comment long before she was asked that question a few years ago. So that has already been like, boop, put it in a corner somewhere and lock it up and throw away the key. The second point that you you had your time. The second point that you talked about were black communities in extremely Republican states. You named Oklahoma, you named North Carolina, and you named and we talk about Detroit, which is actually Michigan, which is a Republican-controlled state. So if you want to talk about where the black community is failing, it is because Republican policies from the top at the state level are not pumping the money back into the cities and inner cities, back into the schools, back into low-income voters. So if you want to talk about that, then let's talk about where the money is coming from and where the money is not going to. So that has nothing to. So if Democrats are trying to scramble around money, is because Republicans aren't putting that money back into their cities. The other point that you make was Donald Trump's loan, his $1 million loan, was actually $15 million.
Very small loan.
Very small loan. But you're talking about $15 million in loans over a course of a time.
Well, let me interrupt both of you, actually, because here's the thing. So this is probably interesting to the audience. So you, Christian, you say that it's a $1 million loan. You, Drexel, say it's a $15 million loan. So when I hear that, I don't know what to think. I'm sure that one of you is closer to being right than the other, but I don't think intentionally either one of you is being right. Chelsea has something to chime in, and then we'll let Drexel finish his point.
I did look this up before we got started.
Sure.
So did I.
So what's on the record is that he testified in 2007 in a deposition that he borrowed $9 million against his future inheritance when he encountered financial difficulties. And then the Wall Street Journal reported that a 1985 casino license document showed that Donald Trump owed his father and father's businesses about $14 million.
Okay, so that sounds like multiple. Yeah, so that's not one loan.
That's multiple loans over time.
Right, so Christian, what I think you're saying, the $1 million loan to get started, he then borrowed more money. That's what I'll take away from that.
They're absolutely famous. They're absolutely famous for holding success against people. If someone has an opportunity, if either one of you on that panel had an opportunity to borrow money to turn it into $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar company, you would have all done it.
No, well,
so we cannot hold something against
The $1 million loan was in 1975.
Hang on one
Just
second.
because it
Hang on, Christian, because we can't really hear you when everyone else is speaking. Chelsea, your point, and then we'll let Stephen talk.
There's a couple of them. If the money, it's been shown, if the money that he got would have just been put into an index fund, it would have been much bigger than it currently is.
Absolutely
so he's
not true.
What? More than billions of dollars? More than a multi-billion-dollar company?
Well, I don't want to get too hung up on this point. So
what index fund is that?
Talk about Mar-a-Lago really quick because I don't think he got into it quick enough.
And that
I don't need to talk. I don't need to talk about his. I don't need to talk about his golf.
And
his
it's
golf
definitely
course.
about switching this argument to bad-mouthing or not or talking badly because somebody starts off successful. That's not what this is about. The issue was the size of the loan. And a loan of $9 million or $14 million is not a small loan to most Americans.
Right.
I understand that maybe in the Manhattan real estate world,
Palm Beach.
that might be considered a small loan.
I mean, a loan of $1 million isn't, not to me. I don't want to borrow $1 million from somebody.
So when he uses the word small loan and he's telling that to the American people, it just shows that he's out of touch with the American people if he thinks $1 million,
Stephen, one quick point for you, and then I'm going to let Drexel
There's
finish, and we're
nothing-
going to let Christian go.
Cribbs, stop interrupting. We'll
Christian
get to you,
Cribbs,
brother.
we can't hear you when you talk. So please
taking
stop.
$1 million loan when you're in 1975 is much different than taking another $9 million against your future inheritance 10 years later. That's okay if he's doing deals on the magnitude in the millions. There's nothing wrong with that, and he has that available.
Hold on,
He's
you're not
turning into
listening
a multi-billion-dollar company.
We don't actually know that, first of all.
Please.
You
His
don't know
financials
that.
show that his income
All right.
last
The
year
financials
was
are
almost $700 million.
You can go on and run for president, and you fill out your own financials.
According to Fortune
You feel-
magazine,
Look
they
at his
agree
real
on the index
estate.
fund.
Okay.
You can use assessed value
So-
as real estate around the
here's the
world.
All right, everybody here in the
Because that-
studio, hang on
you're
one
not
second.
accounting for debt.
Chelsea, hang on. So, Christian Cribbs, I'm going to let you finish up your point because it is very hard to hear you, and then we're going to let you go. But we'll be happy to have you on another time, maybe on a Skype or a landline or something, but it's very hard to hear you. So, what we've just said in the last few minutes, I know you've been trying to chime in, and I want to give you a chance to respond to those things before we let you go.
Everybody has an American dream, whether that American dream fortunes you $1 or $1 million or $9 or $14 million. God bless you. This is the American dream. We're in America. Thank God we are in this country. Now, I want to go to Mar-a-Lago because they talked about race, and I think that the issue with race and the African American and the Latino culture in this country is very important. Donald Trump has a club here, Mar-a-Lago. I go all the time. Great, wonderful wine, great sea bass. We have a club that he owns here that accepts blacks and Jews.
Oh, well, they're just on top of things down in Mar-a-Lago.
The club across the street, no blacks and no Jews. The club up the street, no blacks and no Jews. He could have followed suit. If this man was a racist guy, he wouldn't have taken a photo with Rosa Parks. He wouldn't have taken a photo with Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. These people were up his alley because they liked him. He runs for president, all of a sudden he's racist. It's the Democratic way. You label someone as racist, that's the only thing they have. Look at the photos. Rosa Parks, Al Sharpton, and Jesse Jackson. Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson are the biggest race pimps in America. We're Donald Trump's friend. Don King as well.
Don King could be characterized as racist by some people. Someone in the chat room pointed out, Christian, they wanted to point out the fact that. Okay, I'll let you finish your point.
He accepted people into his club. The club across the street and the club down the street would not accept.
Right. Well, Christian, we appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today. But as I said, it is a bad connection. Don't anybody in the chat room think I'm cutting him off because of what his opinions are. It's very hard to communicate with the people here in the studio and also with him. So, like I said, Christian,
Hillary Clinton's cut me off.
Yeah.
Sorry about it.
It's the NSA. They've got taps on your phone, but we would love to have you on a hard line, as they say.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your time. Is there anywhere that people can find you online, or do you want to send them to DonaldJTrump.com?
On the Facebook, I won't accept you, Christian Cribbs. On Twitter, I will accept you at Christian Cribbs, KRIBBS. And we're going to make America great again, whether you like it or not.
All right, thank you. And I don't know, I'm for America being great again. And before we get to some of the points that we're trying to make, so we can say goodbye to this Skype guest, and then we will be bringing Scott Moore on momentarily, if you don't mind dialing him up in the booth, because he's part of our little cast of characters. Before I get back to, I know, Drexel, you were trying to make some points. I just felt like it was sort of easier to take the bad phone connection off the table. Revenant Plague in the chat room said, They were both garbage. So I jotted that one down because I like how succinctly he put that. I don't know that most people agree with you, but I do love the name Revenant Plague. I don't want to know the story. I just like the combination. Drexel, you've been chomping at the bit to speak more.
I think it was more than a bad connection. It was more like a bad.
Well, I'm saying legitimately, it was really hard to hear it. So that's why
I'm saying that it was more of just a bad fact thing. Listen, I don't even know what else to call it. So here's the thing. I want to point out the beginning of what he talked about, which was what he thought was Hillary's biggest mistake, which was admitting a mistake. I think that a grown-up admits when a mistake happens. And I think that had she been asked that question and she did not answer it in the way of admitting a mistake, it would have been tenfold worse.
She refuses to take accountability.
Right. So I think that it's a lose-lose situation.
Hold that thought, Drexel, because joining us on the phone, Scott Moore at S-Man80. Welcome to the show that you're a part of, Trump versus Hillary.
What's up, Scotty?
Scott, we're sort of going through some of the finer points. I'm going to let Drexel tie up what he says, and then we're going to ask you what you thought about the debate. So hang on.
And just since I'm the only black person on the panel.
Wait, really?
I know.
I hadn't noticed. I don't see race.
I'm not
such a shock.
See me in the club,
I
dude.
think that.
I hope I never see you in the club.
What just because you take just because you take a picture with a black person does not mean you
are not
racist.
Yeah.
Just because you have a black friend or you have an African American does not mean that you are not racist.
Well, I don't think Christian was talking about just the photos. He was talking about his Club Mar-a-Lago.
But that was his point. His point was
he did use them as examples,
of Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson supports
in
Jesse
addition
Jackson.
to
No,
the
Jesse
Mar-a-Lago
Jackson,
club that
yes.
could have followed suit with all the other local businesses that don't accept
Correct.
blacks and Jews. That
But-
was his point.
yes.
So don't try to pin it on just the photos.
Well, he would say that was a business opportunity. If nobody else
and
is
he
serving
said that
these
before.
people.
He has
By the
said
way,
it was a business opportunity to accept those people. And of course, he doesn't want to get
Our
sued
friend in the
100 times.
chat room, Kimberly Kurzatowski, one of our favorites, says admitting a mistake
the
is
other
what an
Kim K.
adult does. Throwing a tantrum and yelling "wrong" is what a toddler does. Thank you, the other Kim K.
Thank you for that, Kimberly.
As I have told you on Twitter, you're the only Kim K that I care about. I don't care
Yes.
about the other one. Is the other
Right.
Kim K, as far as I'm concerned.
But I think there are going to be a lot of people who haven't really followed the media, who haven't really followed the news so closely, but tune in for tonight's big debate, and they do hear and see with their own eyes Hillary Clinton say, "I made a mistake about those emails," and then that thing in the back of their head that they heard about Hillary Clinton in these emails, and they see it. I thought Christian had a valid point for that because there's going to be a lot of voters.
But here's the thing.
who are gonna
I
be
don't
like,
think
wow,
that you're going to
really?
get a single person in America. The news had almost 300 days of straight talking about Hillary Clinton's emails this year, in the past year. So I don't think that there's a person in America who has not heard the email story. So that is baloney.
I actually think it helps to
as Joe
say
Biden
that
would
it's a
say.
mistake because it's an attempt to put it behind you. You know,
Right.
it's, in my mind, saying yes, I did it. It was a mistake. Is probably something she should.
And how
not
many
even
times does she
probably.
have to say
She
it?
should have. Yeah, she should have said it a long time ago, and I guess she has. But saying it now is the key point. And before I go to Scott, it looks like Chelsea is itching to say something.
Yes,
so
please, if I
hang
can-
on, S-Man.
Sorry, Scott.
No worries.
Just really fast about because we're on the issue of race. He said that he settled those lawsuits that were filed against him in the 70s because of racial discrimination
Right.
without admitting guilt. And just as a lawyer, I just want to put out there that most claims that are settle without an admission of wrongdoing. That's just how it's done. So, for example, Wells Fargo recently paid a $185 million fine
about that, yeah.
for fraudulently opening up 200 million accounts without their customers knowing. They paid that fine of $185 without admitting wrongdoing. But you clearly...
We'll take it back, Wells Fargo, if you want to be a sponsor. Anyway, back to you.
Absolutely not. I don't think so.
I will. Don't listen to her.
So, but I just want to say that the part about settling a lawsuit without admission of guilt doesn't really tell us anything about whether he was in fact guilty or not of the behavior that he was
Hillary
sued for.
Clinton made it sound like he was the only one. His real estate firm was the only one that
He's
was
the
being
only
sued.
one running for
Right.
president
Hundreds,
right
maybe
now.
thousands of
That
firms.
doesn't-
In that, it was a class action lawsuit. It wasn't just a Trump lawsuit. Many other companies were sued, and in
But
this
how many
lawsuit.
other
Does
people?
that make
it's not
it
just
okay
that.
that he
Chelsea's
gets
point,
sued?
How
No,
many?
it doesn't
How many
make it
other
okay,
people?
but that doesn't make it what Hillary Clinton was pointing at, it was just Trump's real estate firm.
This was a debate
Nothing to
between,
do with anything.
Right, and this was a debate between Donald
it
Trump.
does.
This was a debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
A lot of people murder, so if I murder you, it's not that big of a deal because millions of
same.
people get murdered across the
You
time.
heard it here
period.
first. Chelsea's
The
going to
point
kill
was,
Stephen.
Clinton was just making it sound like it was only Trump that was doing
Because
that.
Because
she's
only
talking
Trump
about
is on
running
the
for president.
stage.
Who
All
else is
right.
she going to talk
This is
Drexel-
Trump versus Hillary, not Hillary
Drexel,
versus
get
the
out.
world of racists.
I just think that you got to look into it a little bit more.
Drexel, get out
listen,
one more point
look
before we go to
into it.
Scott.
I
who's
was- I was-
waiting
I was-
patiently.
I was- looked into it quite a bit.
I was going to say, as usual, Stephen likes to point out that other people are wrong.
Other people are racist, so it's not that big of a
it's
deal
not
that
just
Trump is.
That's actually not what I said at all.
But that's basically what
I
you were
said the
getting
fact
at. But
that
that's basically what you were getting at.
multiple
So
companies
you
were
think
involved
Hillary
in the
Clinton's
lawsuit,
going
and
to? So you think Hillary Clinton's going to stand up there and say, "Oh, and this person and this person and this person, they all did wrong," and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the one running for president.
No, she can make it sound like
She can make it
what
sound
it
like what?
was.
She can make it sound like what?
exactly what it was, that other companies were involved in it, that it
Wait, hold
wasn't
on a
just
sec.
Trump's real estate
True
firm.
or false? He was sued for this racial discrimination.
True.
So then why
Done.
talk about anything
Okay.
else?
Thank
Why does she
you.
have to
I never
talk about
denied
It's a
that.
great question,
Let's move
Drexel.
on.
Talk about anything
Let's not
else.
talk about it anymore because what we have to talk about is someone who is guilty of not being here tonight. Scott Moore, what did you think of the debate tonight?
I'm guilty because I didn't want to wear a suit and tie.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, actually. Don't worry, we have shorts on under here. Or do we? Wink, wink.
Hey. What's up, Scott? What'd you think, man?
Guys, just to tell you, I mean, I'm watching this from Southwest Florida, one of the most Republican areas of the state tonight. So I've
sorry.
infiltrated enemy ground.
You know, you could have brought a better phone over to Christian Cribb's house. That probably would have helped. But anyway, go ahead, Scott.
Seriously. But look, there are just so many things to say about a lot of the things that Trump said. But let's just be honest. Like, Hillary Clinton clearly, without a doubt, won that debate tonight, wiped the floor with him.
With the mop on his head?
Mute the debate. If you were to just mute the debate and watch the body language and everything else and the optics, as the political pundits like to throw out there, she clearly won it. She came poised. She looked good. She was even-keeled. She had her facts down. She did not interrupt. And then you see on the other side with Trump, he looked angry. He interrupted multiple times. He kept saying wrong. He even was rude towards Lester Holt. He said a lot of things that just made no sense. He was incoherent a lot of the times. If I was an undecided voter watching the first debate tonight, it would have been very tough for me to somehow think that I would now be more inclined to vote for Trump. And unlike what Christian just said, or the media polls have all moved back towards Clinton, including the swing state polls, and definitely was a clear win for her tonight.
It's some interesting points that you made there, Scott. One of the tactics that I thought that Hillary employed well was to make him start asking follow-up questions and then not answer him, because that sort of goes to what I said earlier. Anything you do that really annoys him it builds. Like he's constantly ready to explode at any moment. And if you make him keep asking the same question each time, it's a lot of like, why don't you talk about this? But why don't you talk about it's sort of to Kim K's, the real Kim K's point, that it is kind of like having a child in that sense. And I'm not saying he came off like a child throughout the whole debate, but those moments.
Well, he did at some point.
Sure, but the moments where he's talking over her, and some of them were decent one-liners and moments that people really responded to.
Wrong.
When he just said some wrongs. Well, he did that. He did a wrong. He said a why not. He did some of those, and that's all right. But when you're just sort of pestering her and asking the same question, the best thing for her to do is to not answer, because it bothered him so much. And clearly that was part of the debate preparation, was the more you can get him legitimately annoyed, the more success you're going to have, because it'll just throw him off. And I don't know, I found that to be very interesting. I wanted to talk a little bit about Lester Holt, because that came up. I actually thought this was one of the better debate moderator. He was one of the better debate moderators. Easy for me to say. He was one of the better debate moderators that I'd seen in a while. I always thought Jim Lehrer did a good job, but the last time around we saw a lot of bad ones. I thought Candy Crowley was terrible. She not only wasn't she good, but she fact-checked Mitt Romney incorrectly. Fact-checked him. So to have Lester basically stay out of the way, I think that was good. Don't try and get your format in there and like, no, we have to move on now. It's been 15 minutes. Debate moderators who really enforce the rules annoy the candidates, but annoy everybody watching. It's like, no, let them talk about these things. And I think that Lester would give them a few extra minutes, and then eventually he's like, all right, now you guys are talking in circles. Let's move on for real. And then usually there was one more thing from me, one more thing from the other one, and then he does move on. There's some things that they didn't get to that he tried to get to, but neither one of them really talked about it. So I don't know. I thought he did a good job. Brenda Dulmus says poor Lester didn't get a word in, but here's the thing. I'm glad he didn't get a word in.
Yeah, it wasn't the Lester show.
Yeah, it's not about him, and he realized that.
Yeah.
Matt Lauer
thought it was about him.
Was terrible when he did that. We talked about it here on the show.
Right.
That what was that called? The Commander-in-Chief Town Hall or Forum? And he's Matt Lauer's there to be a celebrity. Lester Holt's there to just kind of move a news story along. So
I think Lester Holt, just sitting back and letting them two go back and forth at each other was exactly what the audience wants to see. And in doing so, each candidate also kind of spun out of the original question and started talking about other issues and started talking about other glimpses of their policies and stuff in it. So in a sense, you were able to kind of cover a lot by just stepping back, but it was nice to kind of have him kind of reeled in.
Yeah, there were definitely moments where I was like, good, I'm glad he's finally stepped in here.
Yeah, keep it moving.
Chelsea, what did you think of the job that Lester Holt did?
I totally agree with you. I'm glad that he didn't stick to the rules altogether, although I would have liked it to somehow black out or just stop when somebody's just droning on and on and on with just not anything of substance, but just sort of attack and annoying comments.
Yeah, in the past they've had debates where there's sort of a lighting system that when you have 15 seconds left and when the light's out, you should stop. It didn't really work, but if you have some sort of thing you're way over your time. And, they both did it. They both talked past their time.
Was 2 minutes too long to respond?
I think so. I think to give them 2 minutes for their first statement on a topic, I think was good. But then after that, I don't think anybody should have gotten.
Right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Scott, as you watched from beautiful Florida, what were some of the other things that struck you about the debate?
Well, I was going to say a couple things that I agreed with. I think Lester Holt did a really good job. There were a few times, especially in the beginning, that I think he waited too long, though, to get back into it, to where it was sort of what happened to him. I think, he has a very tough job. It's hard to balance that moderating job because, like everyone was saying, if you interact too soon, you're going to kind of piss off the audience at home. It's going to be irritating to listen to. But if you're a little bit too long, and he did that a few times, it's sort of wait. Where is he to kind of rein it back in? I do agree 2 minutes for a response was too long. I think a minute for a response would have been good. But I think overall, like I was saying earlier, I think just a lot of Trump's responses were just not making any sense. I mean, if you were to sit there, and I even tweeted this out, I mean, I said I give Trump credit for bringing full-time jobs to fact-checkers because there was just a lot of stuff there that he was saying.
Even Stephen chuckled at that one on the inside.
He was just bringing up a lot of stuff that just, throwing in Rosie O'Donnell at the end, talking about.
Right.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. And,
he was forced to.
Scott, I'm sorry, your time is up. No, I'm just kidding. But speaking of fact checking, we did a little fact checking here because Lester.
We like facts.
Lester Holt wasn't there to do fact checking as Hillary
The Trump
found
campaign
out.
didn't want them to.
Well, but it also wasn't his job, so I'm glad he didn't. Hillary Clinton said that crime has continued to go down in New York City under Mayor Bill de Blasio. I was surprised to hear that, and I looked it up. It's up this year for the year, but it's down recently. So anyone who says one is right, anyone who says the other is also right.
The way I understand it's broken down is like more the violent crime, murders down, property-related crimes up. So that's why both can be.
Well, yeah. So I thought that was one that stood out to me out of all the things that I wanted to check, and I'm like, all right, well, they're sort of both right, I guess. It depends on how you look at it.
But the stop and frisk.
Yes, I know you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, this is another point that I just wanted to jump in as a lawyer on, is that it is true that as of right now, the highest court in the land to have ruled on this issue has said it's unconstitutional. Trump can't undo that just because he doesn't agree with it. The U.S. Supreme Court has not ruled on it, just a lower federal circuit court has. But we don't know what would have happened if it had been appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. depends if, maybe
Right,
Scalia was alive or not.
But the fact of the matter is that that's what happened.
And the point that, Trump is like, well, that's not true. It's not unconstitutional. It just makes me think that he's running for like dictator and not president because he doesn't understand that that's
He
not.
may be. I can't say. I don't have that fact in front of me that he's not running for dictator. I haven't checked it.
That just doesn't really make sense. And when the question was about how do you heal the racial divide in America, and your go-to answer is stop and frisk, law and order, and I was endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. That's not healing the racial divide in America.
Yeah.
That's picking a side and drawing a line in the sand.
But he also said that he agreed with Hillary Clinton. I agree with you on everything you just said in regards to the stop and frisk thing. But he also said in regards to agreeing with Hillary Clinton that there has to be better relationships with the police and the communities. There has to be more police. We have to watch people on the no-fly list and the watch list. We have to watch these people and make it harder for them to get a gun.
I do want to get to, and I don't want us to run out of time
on her gun control.
So that's I thought it was interesting that she mentioned that she mentioned the idea of having background checks on terrorists who want to try and get guns. I thought it was kind of a great way for her to sort of take away a big topic, which is this whole idea of she's soft on terrorism and she also wants to take everybody's guns away. So you kind of wrap it all up inside of, I want to take guns away from terrorists. And I thought it was a good way to kind of disarm that issue. And then Trump went and agreed with her. And I was just like, well, see, so it sort of evened out. And I thought that they both handled that very well.
Can I just say that I was very disappointed in both of the candidates. I would have hoped from Hillary a little bit more that she would have said, well, take that back. Ending the war on drugs would be a huge way to bridge the racial divide and the way that the justice system treats blacks and Hispanics, because the war on drugs has been sort of the fuel to the fire of mass incarceration
and the
of
private prisons. And she touched on that.
But the war on drugs is a much big. The war on drugs has fed the private prisons. So I'm really disappointed that neither candidate has suggested, entertained, discussed either even rescheduling, descheduling things, like marijuana that is pretty, safe. I'm just going to come out and say that. That would have been a really good thing for any one of them to say, and bummed that they didn't.
Drexel, I know you were trying to get in before. I'll blame Scott for talking so much.
No, it's totally fine.
We'll get back
Scott's
to you
not
in
here.
a second,
I've been on that side before where I'm just calling in. It's very hard to get a word in. Listen, I think that there were some... because we talked about Lester Holt. He was fine, whatever. It's Lester Holt. It's not the Lester Holt show. But at the beginning of the debate, Donald Trump talked a lot about economic policy, and I thought he was solid for a Republican on economic policy. But as Hillary Clinton pointed out, Republican, what did she call it? Trumped up, trickle down.
Which, by the way, was what she thought was going to be like a line that really responded well. And maybe it's because she was just like, I call it trumped up economics. And then it's like, chirp, chirp.
Trying to bait
Well, it was almost like Donald Trump pointing out the 30 years. It's just not true. But trumped up economic, trickle down economics is obviously not good economic policy.
Hasn't it? We've all decided, we've all realized that trickle down theory does not work.
I don't know that everybody agrees on it, but we were talking about, I'll just borrow a line from Bill Maher about trickle-down economics. They're literally saying that they're pissing on you. But anyway, back to your point, Drexel. He's a comedian. I hope it's funny.
In terms of the debate in general, because we were talking about the debate, if we're going to talk about policy, as soon as the economic section was over, there was no policy from Donald Trump. There was no policy on, as Chelsea brought up, the racial divide. There was no policy on battling ISIS. Every time he talked about battling ISIS, he talked about what kind of endorsement he got. Like he got from ICE. You can't get an endorsement from ICE.
He did talk about ISIS policy a little bit in terms of having NATO start a terrorist organization, a terror task.
You're talking
he was
about,
the one who
he wasn't the one that started
that.
He wasn't the one that started anything. NATO
he was the one that started talking about it. And then what he said when they came out on the New York Times and said NATO is going to now bring up.
Let me bring Scott in here. At SMan80, by the way, on Twitter. And your thoughts about the policy sort of discussion. Do you agree with Drexel that at a certain point it did sort of fall off and we didn't get that much more policy, at least out of Donald Trump?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think the very beginning for him was strong, minus the snorting, whatever was going on with him physically, as he talks about Hillary Clinton or stamina. But besides that, yes, he started off very strong. He had pretty good points when it came to the Republicans' talking points on the economy, but then after that point on, he basically fell off the rails, and it just became a runaway train as we went further along in the debate. And again, some of these polls the Insta polls are starting to prove that was the case, that he just came across really, really poorly as we went on through.
Especially when he started talking about obese people.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
when he talked about about how some hackers are 400 pounds
person
sitting in bed.
Yeah.
What was that?
At that point, he not only lost the hacker vote, but I feel like he lost the nerd vote, and I'm going to do some research on that.
I don't
because
know what that was
With like
about.
a
That was the
third of
first
the
time he's ever
country
said
being
that, right?
overweight
Yeah.
and some really high percentage being obese.
Not a good move.
But there was
Really
a couple
Go ahead,
other really
Drexel.
concerning points that Donald Trump brought up today. The fact that he talked about the NRA being good people is very concerning.
I mean, I
to a
think that
majority of the
people
American
who are
people.
members of the NRA, I'm not talking about the organizers, I think people that are card-carrying NRA members are good people. They have beliefs that may be different than yours,
Right,
but it's very important to
I'm
them.
talking about the organization.
Okay.
Not necessarily the members. My dad was a member of NRA at one point because he was a military guy. You know, so at some point there are good people who believe in owning a gun, but the NRA as an organization has always been and continues to be a terrorist organization in the United States.
And the NRA
Drexel
just-
Heard at Drexel Heard just said that. I didn't say it. Steven didn't
The
say it.
NRA
Drexel
is the
didn't
one
say
that
it.
doesn't want that no-fly list, no-buy gun
so
thing to
where
pass.
Trump agrees with Hillary Clinton as he did about 4 or 5 times tonight. So maybe he should just vote for her in general.
Well,
but the other part of that
yeah.
was he always brings up the Republicans love war crimes because this is the second or third time that Donald Trump has brought up taking oil from other countries. You don't just go in and just take the oil. That's
I
just
did
not
think it
something
was
that you
interesting
do.
that he said, you know, we should have taken that oil. Like, that should not be the oil. I'm like, really? We should have taken it?
Yeah, let's just do that. You
But the
do
most
that.
surprising thing he did, and, you know,
We should just say that it is accepted that it is a war crime to do such a thing.
He doesn't understand war.
I
crime
don't
and
understand
in
war
general.
crimes, but I know you're talking about Trump. I would
What
say
about
that the
just protecting it from ISIS coming and getting it?
That's not what he said.
That's not what he said.
If you
but
ran
I-
for president, maybe we could talk about that, but that's not what your
When are
candidate
you
has
running for
suggested.
president, Stephen?
Long
Please
time
never.
from now.
Okay.
Long time.
So I think we alluded to it briefly, but I do want to talk about him, Donald Trump, he's the him, bringing up anything to do with the birth certificate is a huge mistake because it
Worse
is,
than
as
the
I said,
email
as I
mistake.
said to Christian Cribbs, not myself, that it highlights sort of the fringe element to his campaign and those things. And yes, you know, he's very proud of it. And by bringing that up, it's just reminding people like, oh yeah, I had all these reasons why I didn't like him. He has this issue, and it is, you know, it tied into the racial issue. I think it wasn't smart, but he missed sort of like a great opportunity when Hillary said that cybersecurity was one of the biggest problems facing us. How does he not make a reference to her emails and cybersecurity? That's like such an easy layup. I was chatting with a friend, my friend Jason Blair, who probably isn't watching because he gets very upset because we don't agree with his politics as a whole. But if he's watching, I'm giving you credit for that. And it's a great point. I hadn't thought of it myself, but I was just like, yeah, that's a perfect opportunity.
Hold on,
to,
does
you know-
Chelsea, do you get paid $6 million a year? Oh, Chelsea Clinton.
Yeah.
I was like, Chelsea?
If Chelsea Galicia gets paid $6 million
I was like,
a
give me
year,
some of that money.
Yeah, we'll have to talk. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting, and yes, you know, he does bring up the emails later. But it was a great way. Look, it's all about bringing things up in sound biteable ways. I know that's not really a word, but you know, ways that can be isolated into whatever the audio equivalent of 140 characters is, whether it's 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And she had a few of those. He had a couple. You know, he got some rounds of applause. She got some rounds of applause. And for the most part, that's probably, you know, any brief news story that's not in depth that covers this debate, it's going to have those. It's going to have those takeaways. And, you know, he had some opportunities, but he was getting too upset.
Right.
She was really flustering him. And towards the end of the debate, because we can swear here, he was really taking 10 pounds of shit and putting it into an 8-pound bag. He was just like, and what about this?
thought he
And
had
don't
his
forget about this.
composure.
No, but,
I mean,
but,
for the most
yeah, but he
part,
should
we've
have stayed.
seen Trump
There's
go off the
things,
handle.
yeah, and
So
he did not. And I don't
comparatively-
think
We saw that tonight.
He did not.
I think he
Compared
did.
to what
I
we've
think
seen.
here's the
Right,
thing.
exactly.
I think there's
Low bar.
Yes, really low bar. I think there's a couple things. I think that he
his first
watched.
presidential
I think that he watched the Rick Lazio debate. And they really drilled him on the Rick Lazio debate. Like, you are standing next to Hillary Clinton. She's been through this ringer before. This is how she won this debate last time. Do not go nuclear. yet.
All right.
I also think that when they do talk more about national security, I think they will prep him a little bit more on the email scandal, because I think that will be a strong Republican talking point when it comes to that.
Agreed.
But I think that the line of the night, or the moment of the night, which is what this election really is about, is the fact that Hillary Clinton said that Trump criticized me for preparing for this debate. I also prepared. You know what? I also prepared for is being president. So, and I think that Trump is
no applause for that line, by the way.
But there's not supposed to be any
supposed to be
applause. That was the rule.
There was applause from
I actually think the applause was sampled by CNN. I don't think
we'll talk about that
there was an
another time, 'cause we
applause
don't
from
have
the
time.
American people, but I think that is what is going to win the election when people actually go to the polls. Who is more prepared to be president of the United States? And at the end of the day, the American people know that there's only one candidate that is prepared to be president. And that's Hillary.
And it's Jill Stein. I actually wanted to bring something to Scott. Scott, what did you think about the way Donald Trump handled Lester Holt's question about saying that Hillary doesn't have the look to be president, and he tried to turn it around and say stamina? Lester didn't really let him off the hook on that.
Or the Iraq War vote.
Right, but let's just stick on that one for a moment because it was alluded to earlier in the show. What did you think about the way that Lester Holt didn't let him off the hook, and the way that Trump was really determined to be like, no, I didn't say that. I said stamina, which I guess he had. What are your thoughts, Scott?
Well, I mean, he didn't say that. He kept repeating at the time that she didn't have the look originally. She didn't have the look that was presidential, and again, that's just code for that she's a woman and that she's not capable. And then when he tried to turn it around about the stamina because he was talking about her health, well, it just didn't look well today because she looked healthy. She was in control, whereas he was sniffling the whole time. And
I thought he was at a party at Gordon Gekko's house. I don't understand why he was sniffing so much.
That's a Coke reference, Stephen. Just
I'm aware.
A second.
But this is the second time. This is the second time.
No, I know.
This is the second time that Donald Trump.
I didn't really hear him sniffling.
No, it was a lot. It stopped, but it was
almost like it was almost like Hillary coughing, but he was sniffling.
I felt like
but I do need to move on to an important point that sort of ties into this because we do only have 5 minutes, believe it or not. As Hillary went on to point out that Donald Trump has called women pigs, slobs, and dogs, and he refuted her point about women in the workforce, and I did look it up on PolitiFact. He did indeed, in a 2004 interview with NBC's Dateline, say, quote, "Pregnancy is a wonderful thing for the woman. It's a wonderful thing for the husband. It's certainly an inconvenience for a business." And he said more beyond that. So yes, go ahead. As the only woman, I guess we'll let you talk about this.
Thank you. The thing that this pointed out for me was that there is, in our system, this two sides. You're either good at business or you behave well for your country. So this came up sort of as a theme that I saw with Trump and his taxes, which I think he kind of admitted to not paying federal taxes because then he came in and
so
said,
smart.
"That's good business."
It's good business. He's so smart.
So it seems like
he said he paid 0%.
So it's like he's being like, hailed as like a good businessman for not paying any taxes. And I think Hillary rightly pointed out that maybe we're not doing so well and we're a third world country now because he's not paying taxes, while then condemning NATO for not paying their fair share. Anyways, but my point that I want to make very quickly is that it is not good that our system is set up so that you are either a good business person or behave well for your country.
Absolutely,
he
I
has
agree with
no
that.
sense of responsibility or obligation to his country, citizens, contractors, but himself, his businesses, and his
I feel like Trump
family.
is very pro-business, and he said that tonight when he talked about jobs and lowering the business tax. When he talked about nuclear, how we're
because we only
defending
have a few
all
minutes.
these countries and no one's paying us. I think he's using a lot of himself.
I was going to say, Donald Trump talks a lot about law and order, but he spent a lot of time talking about how he skirted the law. So, and that's something
use the
law to his advantage,
hurt
other people, or be a businessman. So, where the country doesn't trust big business right now in general, that is something that should be concerning to the Bernie Sanders supporters, to the Jill Stein supporters, to Democrats in general, and to the American people.
And then he wants to get on Hillary about her experience.
Right.
When he has experience of filing for bankruptcy, when he has experience of ripping people off, when he has experience of not paying taxes.
Ripping people off, not paying contractors, yes. Using the laws, Not so much.
So-
He's using
so-
the laws.
so at the end of the
not
day-
paying people for jobs that they did and that you agreed upon
Well,
either verbally or
and
in a
that was the
contract.
thing, because what
that's
he
not
said
okay.
was maybe I didn't pay him because he didn't do a good job. I'm fairly sure that that's
could
not
be-
the way
that
that
could be in a
works.
contract.
It could be in the contract, but it probably isn't.
the
I'm
one
flipping a
instance-
house right now, and if my contractors do not do what we approve, I pay them upon job completion.
You
on our
heard
last
it here
payment.
first. Stephen Helmkamp's a slumlord.
Right. But at the same,
And then what he does is he leverages. He's like, well, I'm going to pay you 1/6 of what I owe you, and if you want the rest, you got to come sue me, and
That's
I'm going to
not
bury
okay.
you in paperwork.
Other than the monstrosity that was Donald Trump tonight, there were a couple of points that I thought that he should not have brought up. His temperament.
Yep.
Talking
I was
about
gonna
the
mention that as we
fact
close, yeah.
that his temperament was his strongest asset, which is not true. But he also brought up the fact he also always brings up China and Mexico, knowing that most of his manufacturing is going to those two countries. He started the debate talking about his weakness and ended the debate talking about his weakness. So that is.
Yeah, but they
If
asked
he
him
wanted
how
to
he's
be a
going to
good
bring
leader,
jobs
if he
back.
wanted to be a good leader, he should have set the stage and been the one person that didn't ship jobs out to Mexico
In
and China.
our final 2
and kept
minutes,
them
I want to
here.
give some more time to Scott Moore, who's been hanging on patiently, and I hope we've given you a fair shake. I was going to ask you about what Drexel said, so we'll kind of let you have the last word here, Scott, about pointing out his temperament. That seems just like, bringing up the birth certificate issue. You're calling attention to something that no one was talking about, and you're like, hey, I'm better at this thing that everybody knows that I'm not better at. I don't have a good temperament. I feel like, Trump supporters, Mr. Cribbs might disagree, but was it a mistake to bring up that particular issue, especially towards the end of the debate where it kind of was a big takeaway for people, Scott?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, it was sort of like he was kicking himself while he was down. It's like, let me just keep bringing up the things that clearly were not his strong suits, and he kept saying that. And it's just, it came across silly and childish because, of course, him screaming that he has the better temperament while she's standing there, not responding, not going to play his game was ridiculous. He shouldn't have done that. The only good thing for him is he's got 2 more debates to improve upon this. So, it's one of the things that people can forget very quickly.
I do think he did not handle it well. The tax return issue. He talked like somebody who has something to hide. But we don't have we don't have anything to hide. But we are out of time, unfortunately, and we have another debate to talk about next Tuesday. It's the vice presidential debate will be next Tuesday. We'll be on at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. So we'll be reacting to that. For the man on the phone, Scott Moore at SMan80. For Christian Cribbs, who I don't remember what he was, but I feel like he's at Christian Cribbs. For Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia, Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard. Stephen Helmkamp at Stephen Helmkamp. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. We will see you next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Pacific, right after the vice presidential debate. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.